You're listening to the Becoming More Me podcast with me, Theresa Lear Levine. You're already enough. But if you're anything like me, you thrive when you're stretching and developing yourself, creating more of the person you feel called to be. This podcast is here to inspire and support you. Let's release the negative, reinforce the positive, and elevate our vibe together as we tap into our limitless potential to transform and grow. Hey, happy New Year, everybody. 2023. Can you believe it? And man, I'm sitting here. I just got my workout. If you listen to my last episode, you know how I love, kind of doing things that involve thinking. After I work out, it feels like my head is clear. I've gotten some energy moving, and it's also one of my favorite times, not only to plan my week, like I talked about in last week's episode, but also to create content, to record a podcast, or to do something creative and inspired. It also tends to be a time of day for me when my kids are still sleeping, which allows for that. So I know some people get up and they might exercise in the morning, but then also their kids are awake. So afterwards they need to feed them or attend to them or spend time with them. And it's not structured that way. But that is part of my get up in the morning philosophy, is to carve out that time for myself. So yeah, that's how I like to do it. And I'm sitting here in my office. I got some amazing seat cushions over the holidays that it feels so good sitting here in my office chair. I've got great lumbar support, great cushion under my legs and my butt. And I just feel like I could sit here all day and be perfectly postured and feel really good. So I'm just enjoying that. And I'm getting ready to do some redecoration behind me here in my office and hang up. I got a new amazing moon calendar for 2023 that has so much detail. I have it over on that side of my office, so I'm looking at it, but just this artist that does it just does amazing work. And I'm really excited to get that up as my backdrop. So you'll probably see that in future weeks. So today I want to focus on disappointment, which seems counter what everybody else is doing this time of year. You've got the whole new year, new you, set your goals, do all the things. It's going to be great, whatever. And I love the fresh start of a new year. So don't get me wrong here. This is a perspective today. And it's emotions that I think are not getting addressed and not getting the pivot that they need sometimes in order to transform into something better. So yes, we have a new year, and yes, it's a clean slate. But to me, it's no different than the clean slate of a new day, a new week, a new month, or a new minute. We can always choose where and when we want to start or rev up or slow down or switch gears or update our intentions or whatever else. So I don't look at a new year any differently than I look at a new day. But that said, oftentimes a new year inspires us to review the year that came before. And I think a lot of times, while it's great to focus on our wins, and I highly recommend that, the typical human will revert to the things that didn't happen or the things that they were disappointed in, that they either didn't accomplish or that fell short, instead of going directly to all the things that we did do, which can be a heck of a lot in the course of 365 days. So as we start the new year, there may be thoughts of, gosh, last year was supposed to be the year that I got in shape or started exercising or started eating better, or last year was supposed to be the year that things changed in my marriage, or I repaired a relationship, or last year was going to be the year that I really felt like I was on top of my parenting and doing a much better job at it. Last year was supposed to be when I broke this certain upper limit or achieved an income goal of a certain amount. Last year is when I was going to start that new business or launch that new program or have X amount of clients. And you start looking at it through that lens. And typically what comes up is a feeling of disappointment. So, simply put, we want to feel successful. We want to feel as though we've achieved certain things. We want to feel that acceptance, that love, whatever it is that we are going for. And there are so many amazing things on the other side of disappointment. But usually it starts feeling like things are really hard for us. And what typically needs to be realized is that we are not going with the flow. We are pushing against and typically making things a lot harder for ourselves than they need to be. And that ends up leading to our disappointment. So there's many ways that we can get turned back around and going with the flow, kind of let go of the oars, so to speak, and start moving with the current that's actually going to take us where we want to go. And that is how we get out of the rut of disappointment. So I want to talk more about that today and more about the feelings and the progression that comes with getting out of that rut of disappointment and with recognizing it. Because guys, if you're feeling disappointed, it's like anything else that, I work on in my EFT rounds or with my clients or with myself. If we just try to jump to not being disappointed, we miss the opportunity to clear that energetic blockage and to truly feel good again. So we have to acknowledge it. And that might mean sitting down and doing an EFT round on the disappointment that you're feeling and what it's all about. It might mean talking to somebody, might mean journaling, might mean meditating on it, whatever resonates with you so that you can tap into that feeling and feel it fully. Hold space for that feeling of disappointment before you try to transform it into something higher vibration. Because disappointment is very low vibration. So, as with anything with law of attraction, if we're feeling disappointed and we're vibrating in that low state, we are going to attract more of that. So, it's very important to get to a higher vibration, but we can't get there authentically and genuinely without acknowledging what we're truly feeling, allowing that energy to move, and then elevating the vibration. So, at any given time, we potentially have within ourselves, and again, I'm looking at this from a law of attraction perspective, 2 points of attraction. So when we're all, tapped in, tuned in, dialed in to our inner being, our true self, our source energy, there is resonance there. And there's power within us to be in the flow and to not be resistant. That's an amazing place to be. But then there's this other point of attraction that we often have when we're not in that state, when we're irritable or grouchy, we're full of self-doubt, we're in disappointment. And when we're feeling those things, we are not in resonance with our inner being, because if we were, we would not feel disappointed. So it's ideal to maintain, nurture that resonance within ourselves and to be plugged into our source energy and our inner being. Now, there's another way this can work too, but it's not ideal. And it happens when we're feeling disappointment about interrelational things, because we can have and find that resonance between us and another. But the thing there is that there's always room to be disappointed, because someone else's point of attraction can shift or change, and you don't and never will have any control over that. So it's better to put yourself in a place of maintaining and nurturing your own resonance than putting another player into the mix that you're depending on to maintain that resonance. If everyone works on their own vibration, then we don't have to worry about that. But we are not in a world where everyone is even conscious that they have a vibration. So you are, and you can work on yours. And that's enough for everything in your life, your relationships, your world to change. Simply put, disappointment is inevitable when we look for the love, the acceptance, the resonance, the success outside of ourself. there's inevitably going to be something that comes up to disappoint you. And that same thing is inevitable when your connection within yourself isn't strong and you're using a weak point of attraction. You will not get what you want or feel what you want if that's the case. And it all comes back to, guys, the idea that how you feel is always the most important thing, which is right up there with understanding what you want more than how to get it. So concentrate on the feeling, everything else falls into place. While our feelings, how we feel, is always the most important thing, that doesn't mean that you're going to be able to maintain a really great feeling all of the time. See, the thing is that when you know what you want, when you get really clear about what you want, then you have that desire and things are getting clearer and you start to move towards what it is that you want. As you begin to move towards what it is that you want, there are more and more opportunities for your resistance to rear its ugly head. And usually we get a lot more resistance coming at us when we really start moving towards whatever it is that we want, maybe even getting that momentum. And it can be confusing if you're not used to it, but it's just an opportunity. It's completely an opportunity to use your elevated consciousness and be able to find safety or resolution or breakthroughs that you need in order to shift things back around and continue going in the direction that you were going in the first place without letting the resistance slow you down or turn you around. And this is why it's really important to work on cultivating your self-trust, your confidence, your inner peace, all of these things that I think sometimes people brush off because like, what do they have to do with any of this? But instead of allowing yourself to fall into thoughts of self-doubt and what ifs and all of that kind of stuff, when you've nurtured your self-confidence and your self-trust, you're more readily able to lean into what you want. And then you're more able to attract the type of people or circumstances that are best to make it happen or to come along with you for this particular ride or thing that you're going after. And that doesn't mean that if you attract someone into that you have to depend on them. They're not necessary for all of this to work out, but they're more likely to be with you for it when you're in the right energetic and magnetized kind of state because you're plugged into source energy. So despite past disappointments or things that have been very real and disappointing for you, maybe even things that you're still using as evidence that whatever it is that you want is not possible, which happens a lot, and oftentimes we're not even conscious that we're doing it, you start to realize, because life is showing you what you want and you're doing your best to go after it and make it happen, you start to realize how much nicer it is to evolve to that next level, to hold space for that. So much nicer than giving yourself a hard time about whatever happened before. Or sometimes even, and this is another one that we're often not conscious about, the need to feel like you were right about whatever happened. Because we can get really stuck there in a need to be right about things that have happened. And sometimes that means making it happen again in a new and different way, even though that's not what we want. So just when we're more conscious of our feeling, and I know it sounds so freaking simple, like, whatever, Theresa, like, I'll just think about how I'm feeling and everything will change. Yes. Yes. Because when you're feeling disappointed, you can't get where you want to go. When you're focusing on the lack, the disappointment, the thing that you don't want, you're getting more of it. I know it sounds simplistic, But the problem is that most people don't lean in to not focusing on what they feel like they're lacking. And it makes a huge difference. But it's so much nicer to be in resonance. And I swear that this is just one of those things that we often forget that we know. And we think, oh gosh, it all sounds good in theory, but I'm going to get out there in the real world and I'm going to start trying to live it. And then that resistance is going to come up and it's all going to be shot. And that's usually when we forget that we know this. And that what we really want is to release that resistance and not live that way. But we get really caught up in the disappointment and the bad feelings and the negativity. I'll tell you like a real life example of this that happens for me quite often, and I've become more aware of it. And so it's always a great opportunity for me to let go. But I would notice a lot of times I would go to meditate. And if you're familiar with different meditation practices, often you want to kind of have your palms up for just that transmission and receiving of energy. And I would find myself oftentimes going to meditate and putting my hands under my legs or under my butt and or putting them downward. And I didn't realize it at first, but it was a resistance to connect and to receive and to get in the flow. And it almost felt like there was a stubborn energy inside of me that I did not want to turn my palms up. And it was hard for me to pull them out from under myself and get into the flow. But I tell you what, every time, as soon as I do, things start to change for the better, because that is when I can shift and connect and receive and be in resonance with my inner being and get in the flow. All the good things happen in the flow. And when we're not in the flow, 99% of the time, it's us that are preventing being there 100% of the time. Okay. I don't even know why I'm giving that 1% leeway. And yeah, so we get in our way. So pick up on those little cues for yourself, those times when you are feeling stubborn and resistance and you are blocking your success and creating your disappointment. Our thoughts create our reality. It's that simple. So what we focus on, we create, and we can make a big difference for ourselves when we shift our focus. And it can be tricky, being in relationship with our goals. And I have weird feelings about goals because I feel like a lot of times just the idea of goals can create resistance versus chasing the feeling instead of the hows and the tasks and all that kind of stuff. But all of it plays a part in where we want to go. So I don't discount that at all. I think one of my biggest issues with goals is a sense of urgency being connected, because urgency is almost always going to bring up resistance. And it's relevant to the idea of disappointment. As things start to move faster towards what you want, you can change your thoughts around it. Because if you're allowing yourself to be swept into disappointment, or, if you're familiar with Abraham Hicks, they like to call them upstream thoughts. Disappointment is definitely an upstream thought, thoughts that are against the flow of where you want to go versus downstream thoughts, which are with the flow, going in the direction of where you want to be going. The idea is to grab something that helps you feel even just a little bit better. And so the problem with urgency is often like you're beating yourself up because you feel like something's taking too long, or that something should have happened already, or you feel like something shouldn't be happening the way that it is happening. And maybe just acknowledging that you don't have to think or work so hard at this can be a first step to release a little bit of that. and to begin going back with the flow and getting back into those downstream thoughts that actually get you where you want to go. Because when you feel it, you can feel it in your body. I often feel it in my shoulders, in my chest. I can feel it in my anxiety. I can feel it in my thoughts when I am struggling or striving. It's always upstream, always. And the feelings that go with that aren't good. And the outcomes are slow because it's not being done in an aligned and resonant way. It's so important, guys. Everything that you've ever been through that didn't feel good in your life was your misguided effort to push against instead of go with the flow. And now that you can understand that and be conscious of it, it's going to be easier to stop. And that doesn't mean that it's never going to happen again. It just means it's going to be easier for you to get out of your own way, to recognize the pattern, to catch yourself, and not to get into a place of trying to justify, explain, or harp on the negative side. That whole, oh, I want it, but this whole thing that gets us into disappointment. It's so important because everything that you want has two opposite ends to it. So sometimes when you think you're talking about how badly you want something, what you're actually talking about is how bad you feel in not getting or having it yet. And so what you want to do is really pay attention to that feeling. The other end of it is the appreciation and the gratitude for having received it and putting yourself into that energy and that feeling before it even happens, because that's the vibration you need to be at in order for it to happen. And so often we're paying attention to the subject, the disappointment, the feeling that we feel like we're lacking. We're paying attention to that, and we're not paying attention to the feeling that gets us where we want to go. So sometimes it's a matter of taking a minute, taking a step back, and really processing what's going on in your situation and what you're actually tuned into. Is it the subject, the thing, or is it the feeling? And if it's the feeling, are they feelings that are going to move you downstream and in the direction of what you want to have happen? And I'll tell you, one of the hardest parts about this, especially for type A personalities, high functioning anxiety, even ADHD, is that urgency feels important to us. That urgency feels like it must be what's going to drive us and get us there, and we think that we have to work super hard or all the time or constantly be thinking about the thing that we want to make happen. But what we really need to do is let go and relax. And it feels so freaking counterintuitive at first because it has us feeling like we're not doing anything. But it's so important because when we relax and we release that resistance, that's when we're able to become more creative and more things begin to happen. And we actually start moving in the direction of what we want. And so often we prevent that by feeling like we have to hold on to the urgency or punish ourselves or beat ourselves up along the way and make it really hard, as if that's the only way it can happen. And it prevents so much from happening. And you have to practice with the whole letting go thing and the relaxing. It's one of those things that if you're not used to it and you're one of those people that's just squeezing in, working on something all the time and not allowing yourself the stillness that's required to become creative and to pivot downstream and to recharge and appreciate and have that gratitude and everything else, it can feel really difficult. Sometimes it's when I first started trying to release my anxiety and kind of get out of the high functioning anxiety mode of just always go, 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 do, do, do. It's like I had to schedule it in. Like, okay, now's the time on Saturday when I'm just going to chill. And it feels weird at first, guys. It does. But then it becomes this habit that you know is making everything happen faster. And you get better trust in letting go of those oars and letting the universe put some pieces together for you while you actually simply enjoy being alive in your body, living this life, and all of the things that you've already accomplished. And that helps you to attract more of what you want. And I know some of us have some really big disappointments that are in our past, and they are still tainting or coloring or affecting our present. And in those circumstances, it's so very important to call your power back to the present so that you can show up differently now and decide that feeling good is more important than being right. If you have like a victim story or you're just, in that past situation still, feeling good is so much better than being right. And pulling your power back into the present moment is, man, it's the only place we have any power. So, I love using EFT for that. Sometimes just one simple round of EFT can bring me present in the most clarifying of ways. And getting present allows you to shift and go downstream. So sometimes you just need to experiment with what actually helps you to feel better, what helps you to bring your power present, what you're thinking, the questions maybe you're asking in your head throughout the day, and that kind of stuff. Realizing that maybe some of the thoughts or questions in your head are disempowering and some are more empowering, and that maybe you want to shift your focus to more of those as you navigate through things. And ask yourself some, better questions. There's so much that goes on between our two ears in these minds of ours on any given day, and minding our minds is really important. And that feeling of moving in the right direction and the relief that you experience in moving in the right direction is so much more powerful and important than urgency or pressure or those things that are often slowing you down or stopping you altogether. I'll give you a little example that I think most people can resonate with. And that is the example of going to an amusement park and waiting in line for a roller coaster or any attraction. If you're not a roller coaster rider, perhaps you've been to Disney and you've waited in line for some attraction, and there's many lines that take a very long time. And you're getting in line for the attraction, you're super excited to go on it. And think about this also like working towards a goal. Okay. It's kind of a parallel. And it's a great ride. You've heard a lot about it. A lot of people want to go on it because it's a great ride. And you know how like roller coaster queues are. A lot of times you enter the queue, and at the beginning you can go through it really quickly and a lot is happening and you feel like you're making really great progress. And then oftentimes they've built in some kind of a facade and you kind of either go indoors or around a wall or something. And then you can suddenly see that there are a heck of a lot more people in line and that you're not going to be moving fast for long. And a little bit of disappointment might creep in at that point, right? Because you were going so quickly, you were moving so fast towards your goal, and now all of a sudden you are not going as fast anymore, and you've kind of hit the line, not moving at the same speed, and maybe there's even a technical difficulty right now with that ride that you're trying to get on, and the line isn't moving at all, not even inching. So you've been going really fast, and now there's a sea of people, and the reality hits you that there's still potentially hours to go before you're actually going to get to ride this roller coaster, to achieve this goal. And now you're just stopped while they fix these technical difficulties and you're not moving at all. So that does not feel good. But as soon as that line starts going, as soon as they open it back up, that first group of people get back on the roller coaster, and now things are moving again, you inch forward. And that feels really good because you know you're moving in the right direction again. You're getting closer to what you've been anticipating, and you're anticipating it again. So it's the same with our goals. Sometimes in the beginning, there's all this, airy fairy ideas, and it feels really easy because there's no resistance in the beginning. It just feels good. We haven't come up against any of the things in the real world that makes us doubt ourselves as we move forward. We just move right along. And then we get smacked in the face with some kind of doubt, disappointment, something that was unexpected. And then we're stopped in our tracks. So we could give up. We could, just leave the ride for the roller coaster and say, it's not worth it. It's too difficult. It's too hard. I want it, but kind of thing. And that would be disappointing, right? Or we can commit to being there and we can start inching closer to it. Maybe even get some momentum. Kind of like now that the roller coaster is back up and working again, the line starts to move at a steadier pace. And at least you're not standing still, right? Like when it was broken down. And that has a huge sense of relief that you get to feel as you move forward, as you go downstream. That good feeling, that sense of relief is what matters most. And it doesn't matter that you had been moving a lot faster before and now you're only inching along one car at a time. Moving forward restores your hope. And that's the biggest thing. Hope and good feelings and moving towards what you want. So I hope that kind of makes it a little bit clearer that the feeling is what matters most, not the speed. Everything is always perfectly aligned and right on time, but you get to play around with how you feel and what moves you closer to better feelings and what questions make you feel better and what gets you moving in the right direction. And this is a skill that you get to get better at and fine tune over time. These things are always going to pop up and happen, but the way you respond to them is actually a skill you can develop and get better at. Get better at getting into the vibration that you need to be able to achieve the things that you want to achieve. It's pretty cool. So I hope this is helpful, whether you're entering the new year and feeling disappointed about what didn't happen last year, or maybe you enter the new year full steam ahead and you are in that place of like moving really fast with your goals and you haven't hit the wall yet. It comes up all the time with people's goals towards like the end of January, the beginning of February. That's usually when they hit some kind of a wall. And that's when so many people abandon what they're working towards. And I hate to see that happen because that's when you really want to recognize the form that your resistance is coming in and to remember that you're always going to be either justifying, rationalizing, or defending when you're in resistance. One or all of those three things are going to be present. So when those come up, it's great opportunity for you to say, hey, I'm resisting. I'm in resistance. I am going upstream. I am not in the flow. And I can turn this around and reach for something that feels better than this. And that's what I hope you'll do. That's the whole reason why I wanted to record this episode, because we need to understand our disappointment. We need to understand how to transform it. And we need to understand how to get going in the direction of what it is that feels better, that helps us to get what we want. Okay. I hope that was helpful to you. And I welcome any of your feedback or questions that you might have about this. And I'm wishing you an amazing 2023. Thanks for listening and have an awesome day.
Thanks so much for listening. If you loved this episode, please share it with a friend or post on social media and tag me so I can personally connect and thank you. Until next time, keep taking bold and brave action steps towards becoming more of who you want to be in this world. You are capable, you are worthy, and you are enough. Keep shining your light.